Waterfall, the CCW podcast.
Hello and welcome to Waterfall. It's the water saving podcast brought to you by CCW. That's the Consumer Council for Water. This is a podcast that is all about water. I'm Mike and I'm here with my amazing co-host.
It's me, it's Karen.
Well, it's always great when you come back for another one, Karen. So, it's always a winner on Waterfall when you're here. But we've got an exciting episode today because we are going global. We are going to find out all about Malawi, the water situation there. We've got a fabulous guest on. There's some amazing insights that we are going to be hearing in this episode.
But before we do that, Mike, I just wanted to give a shout out to Tony in New York, USA.
New York? Wow.
I know. Tony wrote to us, or should I say emailed, just to tell us that he's been following the podcast, adopting some of our tips. And the thing that I was particularly interested in, as you'll know only too well, is the fact that one of the things that is key to his rainwater saving is the use of water butts. Now, he's been using that water to top up the toilet system, and so he's using rainwater to flush his toilets.
Wow, and that's amazing. I was really struck by his very tangible savings that he's been making too. I also was struck by the tips that he's actually suggested in his email that we weren't really aware of, because he was using condensate, so the condensation from a heat pump and reusing that water, and also using condensate from a air conditioning system as well, and using that water. And I mean, I can understand where we're not so familiar with that here in the UK, because, heat pumps and air conditioning, it never really gets that warm, well, except for last summer. So, but we're learning too. So it was great for that Tony got in touch. It was such a lovely email. When I sent it to you, what was your reaction? Do you remember? It was such a nice email. You said, did you write that yourself, Mike? You did, didn't you?
Well, I must admit, you and Tom were always talking to me about, our impact on countries around the world. And I was a little bit suspicious that we'd got that far afield.
I can't believe you have such a low opinion of me there, Karen. But do you know what? This just shows, though, that every time I put you on the spot and say, what's our email address, this is paying off, right? It is.
Just about, yes.
No, but it genuinely lovely to hear from Tony. It was interesting. The day I opened up, I'd had a really long day at work. I was absolutely exhausted. And I read that email, and when you just, something like that lands, it just gave you such a boost. So go on. Listeners, we love hearing from you, and it is great to hear from you. And don't forget, we do have an email address, don't we, Karen?
Yes, we do. And that is podcast@ccwater.org.uk. So please use it.
Indeed, as people are doing. And don't forget, we also have an Instagram feed, which is Waterfall Podcast. So on to today's episode. This is super exciting. We are venturing globally, and our first port of call is Malawi. And it's a great pleasure to welcome Arthur Milanzi to the Waterfall Podcast. Arthur is a UK resident now, but was born in Malawi and kind of flips between the two countries and does a lot of work both in UK and Malawi, including water projects. So it is time to bring on the guest.
This podcast is brought to you by CCW, the voice for water consumers.
So it's great to welcome Arthur here to Waterfall. Arthur, really great to have you on the show. You are the first of our international guests.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Great. So just before we get into watery stuff, just help orientate both me, Tom, Karen, and the listeners, and just tell us a bit about Malawi.
Malawi is probably one of the best countries you've never heard of. If we just go statistically, one of the poorest countries in the world, but it's also ranked the happiest country in the world.
That says something in itself.
Exactly. It's southeast of Africa. It borders Mozambique, Tanzania, and Zambia. And
so a landlocked country.
It's a landlocked country. And it also hosts the third largest freshwater lake in Africa and the seventh largest or the eighth largest freshwater lake in the world.
Wow. So I'm guessing water resources are no problem then.
It'll be interesting. Let's see what we unfold during our chat,
So we were doing some research on it, and it looks amazing. It looked like for not a big country, it looked like in terms of geography, it seemed to have it all.
Yes, it is beautiful. The landscape is amazing. The landscape is literally breathtaking. We have nice nature reserves, wild animals. We've got good cities as well, good beaches. I'm talking, you could be in a beach in Malawi and think you're somewhere in Hawaii or Bahamas.
So this is the beach on Lake Malawi, right?
On Lake Malawi, correct. Interesting story. I went to a music festival in Malawi in 2017, and it was in the most remote part of Malawi along the lake. And we found this beautiful, beautiful resort where we stayed. And the couple that owned that particular resort are from Nottingham. They went to Malawi on holiday, ended up selling their house while they were in Malawi, and they bought this place. And they've never moved back.
Wow.
And another fun fact, they lived a street down the road from where I grew up in Nottingham.
In Nottingham?
Yes.
Wow.
Small world.
Did they give you free entry into this concert?
No, the festival was like somewhere else. We just stayed at this place because it was the closest place to where the festival was. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. So let's dig into water. Tell us we should be diving into water, surely. I mean, Tom should be picking me up, not using enough water.
Extracting, isn't there?
So let's dive into water.
It depends on how you look at it. You can also be digging into water and you can
Yes,
also
you
touch
can.
on that. Exactly.
I see what you did there. That's good. I like this. Right. I think let's be. Stop it, Tom. We should. Your job is on the line, Tom. Okay. Because we're
Sorry.
I'm going for Arthur as the new co-host. Okay.
I agree.
Yeah, so just tell us a bit about the water situation in Malawi in terms of access to clean water. You've already said Malawi is not a rich country.
Yeah.
So what's this? Just tell us a bit about the situation.
Considering that 21% of Malawi is actually covered by fresh water, only about 90% of the population have access to clean drinking water.
90.
Sorry. 90% of the population do not have access.
Oh, do not?
Do not have access to clean drinking
Wow.
water.
So when you say access, that's in their house?
Yeah. Correct.
Okay. Wow. So that's quite a fact.
It is a fact. Considering that water is in abundance. But yeah, access to clean drinking water is a problem.
So this is the infrastructure just not there, is that the situation?
Lack of infrastructure. Unfortunately, Malawi is one of those countries that has, I want to say, developed backwards. The lack of development and infrastructure is really what has hindered access to water and just basic resources to the local people.
So the in terms of the distribution now, I'm making a hazard a guess. It's cities and it would tend to have access to fresh water in the houses.
Yeah. The cities. So I would say they're about 4 or 5, arguably, major cities in Malawi, who will have access to water. But even then, you will see that the water will only span maybe, I would say, 10 kilometers from the center.
Right. So it's very localized.
Yeah, it's very localized water networks and water distribution. Even the fact that we've got even for the cities where water is readily available, is still rationed. So you will have days where there's no water supply in the capital city. And this is a real thing.
Wow. Yeah. So water rationing, that's commonplace.
That is very common. Because what happens is the major cities are some distance away from the fresh water source, i.e. the lake. And keeping in mind, Malawi also has a lot of freshwater springs. So there's a lot of bottled water everywhere in Malawi. Yeah. But what has happened is people find water sources and then they'll build a little fence around it and then they'll put a pump and bottling plant right next to it. And then they bottle the water. And then they're making businesses out of it. And you find that the local community outside of that fence perimeter don't have access to clean water.
So does that build resentment then amongst those local communities?
You know the term that the rich get richer?
Yeah.
Very much applies to Malawi.
Right.
Very much applies to Malawi. There is no equal distribution of wealth. There certainly isn't a welfare system. And the challenge is majority of the people that live in remote parts got used to the way of life that they don't see this as a problem. You know, it's the whole question about, you know, what is poverty really and truly. You know, if you go to the most remote part of the world, you find that people are living in mud huts and they're not wearing shoes, and they've existed like that for generations. But the moment you go there and give one child a pair of shoes, all of a sudden it highlights the fact that everybody else doesn't have shoes. You know, it's the same thing where you go in a village where they used to walking 10 kilometers to get water. And the day you give someone a bike, all of a sudden everyone else is lazy because it's now a chore. You've highlighted the fact that there's an issue. So the people have gotten used to the way they live now. You know, it's only, I suppose, we have a lot more access now to the country based on aspirations, business aspirations, or climate aspirations. We're now accessing parts of the country that we wouldn't have otherwise accessed, and realizing that, wait, there's something really wrong here. You know, there are people that have lived that we have almost forgotten. You know, that we haven't really catered to. We haven't thought of, let's make water accessible to them. You know, so, and this is a real issue in Malawi.
So you've just introduced so many follow-up questions. I don't know where to start on this. For the communities that don't have access, that you've just sort of name-checked that, you know, some has to go 10 kilometres. Is that the sort of typical situation, or would a village and towns have wells? You know, I'm just trying to get a flavour for how far would people have to travel to access water.
It's interesting. It's almost like I believe there are parts of Malawi where they don't have access to wells. You know, I certainly believe this. Not even believe this. It is a fact. You know, that they have to walk 10, 15 kilometers to get water. You know, I'll give you a real example. We were driving through a very remote part, and we came across this beautiful hospital that was built by a missionary. And we went into the hospital thinking, oh, this is exciting. It's in a very remote part. Let's just talk to the people and find out how the hospital came about, how many people it's servicing, etc. And I was saddened with the fact that the hospital is not functional. They had patients, but it's not functional because they don't have any water. And I thought, oh, is this maybe, you know, rationing? Is it that you haven't got water for a few days? Like, no, I haven't had water for a year. You know, and in the maternity ward, when they have a birth, for example, they have to walk 5 kilometers to get water from a well to bring it back to the hospital.
Wow, that's an incredibly sad story that you've got facilities that can't be used properly.
Correct.
And that just shows, even in that little story, just how access to water and development are intrinsically linked.
Absolutely.
And, you know, we should never forget that when we're looking at, you know, projects to open up access to water. I've got a question going back to the rota cuts though as well.
Yeah.
And the rationing.
Yes.
Are people given warning then, or is it just random? You know, so you wake up and there's no water, or are you given advance warning?
You could be in the shower with soap and shampoo in your hair, and the water will stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that random. It's that random. I was in Malawi in November last year, and I remember this one particular day, I drove from the field where we were doing some work, like in a very remote part, and I say, right, I'm looking forward to going to the capital city because I just want to relax, have a nice hot shower. And I got there was no electricity, no water.
Wow.
At the hotel.
And this is in the capital?
This is in the capital. Exactly. And I'm covered in mud because I've been in the field all day. I was just looking forward to this, just having a shower, and there was no water for 5 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so we've talked about availability and access and reliability. What about quality? Is water safe to drink?
Water is safe to drink. Like I say, even Lake Malawi, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place, fresh water. And for those that have access to water, it's very safe to drink. But what tends to happen during rainy season, all the water gets contaminated. So like currently, so rainy season starts in December. currently Malawi is battling an issue of cholera because of water contaminated. So all of a sudden, the water wells are not as safe to drink, but these are the only sources of water for the people in the rural parts of the country. And you find it that, it's literally they have to gamble their life to drink that water because there aren't any other sources of water.
And that's a gamble people shouldn't have to take.
Exactly. If I show you the cholera statistics today, you think you're looking at COVID numbers.
Wow.
Yeah. But this is not, again, because this is a local problem. It's not an international problem. It's easy to overlook because when you're far away from something like that, it doesn't really affect you. It doesn't even register on your radar as far as having any sort of feeling towards it or even an understanding that it's happening and young children are dying every single day just because they can't drink just because they haven't got clean water.
Right, so classic out of sight, out of mind.
Out of sight, out of mind.
That it does not make it right.
And the thing is, it even happens in country. Yes, you can see the government efforts are there to say, right, let's create awareness and, let's promote vaccinations, etc. But this is a problem that's occurring every year. I would have expected by now that we would have been a little bit further down the road and have some more permanent solutions. This is a problem that we see every rainy season, but we're always reacting to it instead of planning for it, and this is always the challenge. And where I suppose the balance is, when you're a poor country, let's use that term, there'll always be something that will take priority. You're always constantly reacting to something. It's hard to plan for those things. Just like, when I was in Malawi, November and part of December, there was a fuel shortage. There was a fuel crisis, cars queuing up 5-6 miles waiting for petrol, just to fuel up your tank. And you're queuing up for 6 miles, not because the pumps are working, but because you're hoping that the petrol station will have a delivery for fuel so that you can get yours before it runs out. So this is a priority at a time where we're approaching rainy season. So the government can't exactly plan for water, in December and January because all their resources are focused on how we're going to get cars back on the road.
So you get into a constant cycle of firefighting
Correct.
and knee-jerk reaction rather than planning. I was going to ask you about the kind of progress. How has this changed over, say, the last 10 years? Have you seen marked progress?
There certainly has been progress. I think Malawi as a country, like I say, we have come to the realization that Malawi is very rich in minerals. So that has attracted a lot of international companies coming in to carry out mineral exploration, and as part of their corporate social responsibility, they're now, saying, right, what can we do? And everyone is waking up to the realization of we're in a very remote part. Where do we get water? So therefore, we're now looking for water beneath the ground rather, to provide access to water for.
And there is groundwater there.
There is a lot of groundwater. We did an exercise in November last year, where we literally mapped out the area that we're currently working, and we identified bodies of water. So now we actually start drilling next month, so we can actually provide the local people access to water.
Yeah, so just tell me a bit more about the work that you're doing specifically, because you're looking at mineral extraction, right?
So at the moment we're doing mineral exploration. Malawi is a landlocked country, but it is also very rich in minerals. I think it's safe to say that it's still early stages for the extractive industry in Malawi. At the moment, I can almost say the claim to fame in this particular industry is a company found the largest rutile deposit in the world.
I don't know what that is, so tell our listeners, just in case they're as stupid as I am.
If I could put it in layman's terms, rutile is used in paint. It's one of the components that's used in paint. That's the easiest way I can put it. It is a lot more complex than that in nature, but I
like things in simple terms. Yeah. No, that's very helpful. Really helpful.
Yeah. So, but Malawi has, everything. I mean, there's a known deposit for uranium. There's a uranium mine now. There was a bit of a gold rush a couple of years ago, where farmers, started finding gold nuggets in their farms. So Malawi has very interesting stories when you really look at the extractive industry. But like I say, it's still in its infancy. I don't think we have the big story yet. But I believe that big story is coming because there's a lot of Canadian, British, Australian companies, listed companies that now have boots on the ground, and our company is a local company, but of course with international ties. So we're doing some work in that space, but with the idea of creating small clusters of prosperity in rural areas. And what I mean by clusters of prosperity, the initiative that we've taken is to identify water sources underground, and then putting access to that water. So putting boreholes, creating water wells with solar panel pumps, so that at least they can have it's not a long process for them to draw the water. But not only creating water for drinking and for livelihood, as it were, but we're also creating water for farming, and we're creating water for animal feed. So with the idea of once we empower the local people and giving them like this basic natural resource, which is vital to life, we can now encourage them to get into farming. We can start to create jobs. So we're trying to create, in the areas that we're working, we're trying to create small clusters of prosperity where we build their own economy, where they can trade with each other. And not only that, one of the things that we're also doing with the farmers, for example, we provide them with all their inputs, but we also provide them with a offtake agreement for their excess. So first of all, you have to feed your family, but you also need a market, because one of the largest challenges, I suppose, in Africa, for Malawi, for example, Malawi has a lot of fruit, right? You can literally, you can drive down the road and there'll be mangoes, watermelons, you name it, organic. Yeah. But it's seasonal, and we don't have, you only sort of enjoy it for that season. We don't have, drying facilities. We're not making juices. We're not diversifying the produce. So what we're trying to do is give these local people who are in remote parts the ability for them to grow crops for themselves, but to also give them an offtake agreement, where we're now starting to speak to other international companies to give us offtake agreements so we can export. So where we can add value in country, we'll add value in country, so that the farmers get the full benefit of their work. So this is something that we're doing as part of our corporate social responsibility, but we also, and it's part and parcel of who we are and what we do as a business, because we realize, it's almost like when you go into some of these remote parts, it almost seems like a metaphor that you see people that are so poor, yet the ground that they live is so rich in minerals. So what we're trying to do is educate them. We're not going there to take from them, but we want to say, right, this is what we found. How can we make sure that the deposits and the resources that we found benefit the community at large? So that they should be the recipients, not only for what we'll do after the exploration, but while we're doing the exploration, let's empower them. Let's give them water. Let's, if there are schools, let's help them develop and build those schools. So we're doing a lot of outreach in that regard, and it's a beautiful thing.
Be sure to head back through the archives and check out all the past episodes of Waterfall.
It was interesting as you were talking there. The phrase you've just said, it was actually virtually in my mind. I was thinking you're painting a picture of a country that's rich but not wealthy.
Yeah.
But with so much potential, right?
A lot of potential. And I believe it will take a lot of changes, political changes. But I believe Malawi as a country, 20 years from now, will be, 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 20 years from will outgrow, as far as trajectory on development, will outgrow some of the countries in the West. Only because, like, I'll give you an example. When we were doing this water project, we stopped at a place, and one of the geologists I traveled with, he picked up a small stone about that big, like the size of a index finger, and brought it back, took it to the lab, and they started testing it to see what it was. It could be just a rock or anything. And it has a high concentration of cobalt. Cobalt is what all the electric car manufacturing, automotive industry that's one of the critical minerals that they're actually looking for. At the moment, 70% of the cobalt that's used in all car manufacturing comes from Congo. And we know that in Congo, there's issues of child labor. There's all sorts of issues there. But Malawi on the southeast of Africa, untapped, no real political issues on the surface, no conflict, one of the most peaceful countries, underexplored. And we've been able to find, strong concentration of cobalt on the surface. So I know that eventually, if Malawi plays the extractive industry right and not just sell it off, it can actually develop into a nice little hub in the southeast of Africa.
Loads of potential. I want to talk about toilets because Tom's smirking. Because we need to, because we've talked about access to water. We've talked about access to water. But what about the sanitation side of things, the toilet side of things? What's the situation there?
I can almost say that same statistic of 90% of people haven't got access to clean water. It's almost a similar number that haven't got access to toilets.
And you've already mentioned cholera. And if
Yes.
you don't have basic sanitation sorted, diseases are going to be an issue, right?
So what you find, so toilets is one of those things that it's almost like a forgotten conversation, because even when you see, you just go outside, even here in the UK, go outside, and when you see a homeless man, you don't think, did they have access to a toilet? That's the last thing on your mind. In fact, it's probably never even crossed your mind, but you certainly think, have they had something to eat? You certainly think it's very cold outside. Can I give them, how do they stay warm? So it's almost like when toilets is a very interesting conversation. And I feel like it's the forgotten conversation, even in developing countries, because it's almost like you look at the needs of a person are so severe that toilet doesn't even register on the radar. So at the moment, sanitation is yeah, it's not even, it doesn't even make the conversation, but we know that it's bad. People haven't got access to toilets. And one of the saddest things, for instance, about Lake Malawi, for example, it's you find that a lot of waste, well, it's not a lot to be fair, it's not a lot of waste, but some waste goes into Lake Malawi, as it were. Which is why some of yes, it's the fresh water source, but for the local people, because they drink from the shore, it's also contaminated somewhat. So you find toilets is the forgotten conversation. No, they haven't got access to toilets. In the rural parts of the country, they have their man-made toilets where they dig a hole in the ground, as it were. And that seems to be the only form of toilet that's actually available.
And as part of your project work, are you?
So we are looking at sanitation, but we realize the biggest thing that we need to tackle first is water, access to water. Sanitation, you find most of the villages that you come across in the rural parts, they will have their own toilets where they've dug a hole in the ground and put maybe a bit of wood and dirt to make sure that they secure the ground so that you don't fall in, etc. And then cover it with mud with a little hole. It's very descriptive. The only way I can describe it is I've seen toilets like this in a hotel in China where it's a hole in the floor. That's the only way I can describe it. Yeah.
I mean, it's a big deal though. The toilet issue, particularly for teenage girls, people who are women and girls that are hitting their periods, and we're deliberately, by the way, calling these sort of issues out on What's For, because it's topics that we must talk about, even
Absolutely.
if we feel a bit awkward. And I think we've got to be we have to be kind of making sure we don't skip some of these kind of issues, because you're talking about development opportunities, and we want equal opportunities. And when you talk about sanitation, we've got to think about a cohort of people who are being disproportionately affected.
Absolutely, and you couldn't have said it better. It's one of those things that we is certainly at the forefront of our minds and what we do, especially girls, for example, or women, I should say. Because the extractive industry, or mining industry, if we call it that for now, is almost heavily male dominated, and it is for that reason why we've actually partnered with the Women's Foundation that was actually set up by my wife, because I didn't feel comfortable working in an industry where just putting it out there, our goal as a company is to ensure that 50% or more than 50% of our staff are women. We have to find a way of making that work. We're recruiting female geologists. Even our management is predominantly women, just because we understand the importance of empowering women in developing countries. In the West, yes, we've kind of sort of cracked it. It's still an ongoing conversation. Kind of being the operative term there.
Yeah.
But in developing countries, it's the situation is dire. It's bad. It's bad. It's almost like in Malawi, we've just managed to stop child marriages, some years back, very recent, I should say. Yeah, there just isn't the same opportunity for young women and girls. And sanitation is one of those things, like I say, it's almost taboo for a girl to be on a period in some rural parts. So again, it's about bringing the education and making sure that the right facilities are in place. It's not something that I believe will overcome overnight, but I think if we all do our part, and certainly one of the things that's impressed upon our company is to ensure that irrespective of whether we find what we're looking for in the exploration or not, we need to ensure that we leave the people in those communities better than we found them. And that's key.
Good mantra to have. I totally agree with what you're saying about about tackling some of these issues, because even if it's super awkward to talk about it and we're pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone, we shouldn't avoid it. The worst thing we can do is avoid some of these tricky issues. So it's great what you're trying to do there. I'm conscious that one of the things that we want to do on Waterfall, right, is to try and empower people in terms of understanding what they can do to save water and not do the wrong things with their toilets. But part of that empowerment is about valuing water and your attitudes to water. And you've lived in the UK for quite a number of years now, right?
21 years.
Yeah,
yes.
and you're kind of got 1 foot in Malawi, 1 foot in the UK, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we absolutely take water and sewage services for granted in the UK. What's the general attitude in Malawi towards water and sanitation?
Water is precious. I can tell you that water is precious. It's almost, water is a luxury in Malawi. It's a luxury commodity that's awarded to the few that have the money to afford it, and that's just the reality of it. Like if you go to, you don't really get street vendors here, so that wouldn't be the right example. But yeah,
but we know what you mean.
Water is a luxury.
Yeah.
Water is a luxury. In Malawi, the attitude towards water, people don't waste water. You'll find in houses, even in the cities, you'll find that in the houses where they have access to water, they'll always store some water for that one day where there's no access to water anywhere. So it is a luxury. It is a luxury. It is a commodity, a very, almost, I would say, a rare commodity in a country that's covered by water, pretty much. So the attitude towards water in Malawi and in the UK, very different. I think in the UK, we're very wasteful, in that regard. I mean, I'm guilty of this, and even, just sometimes watching, putting the dishwasher on, for example, I think, is it necessary? Can I, so I think it's something that we don't really, it's not on the forefront of our conscious, even in the time where cost of living is high, utilities are so high. I'm more conscious about my gas and electric than I am my water. If I want to have a 20-minute shower, not that I recommend it. I'm just saying. It's not something that, like I say, I'm very conscious about water, but I'm just saying, like in the UK, you find that it's people waste water. We water the grass in the summer. Is it necessary? I mean,
no, you're absolutely right.
Is it necessary for sprinklers to be on in certain parts of the country? I don't think it is. I really genuinely don't think it is. So even the way we, not just even water in homes, even businesses. The amount of times I see a burst pipe and water running for like weeks on end and nobody has done anything about it. Stuff like that for me is concerning, because like I say, this is in the parts where I visit in this world, it's a luxury,
So the longer you've lived in the UK, have you felt yourself getting more complacent towards your attitude towards water?
No. I must say, one of the things that I've struggled to shake off growing up, my family did okay, and because of the issues that we've just been talking about, I was always taught to drink bottled water, for example. And it's something that I've carried because of concerns about water quality, and it's something that I've carried on even until now. In my adult life.
So drinking bottled water, even though you're in the UK.
Water. Yeah, exactly.
You don't need to do that.
I know, but it's I guess it's a mind thing. It's something. It's a personal battle that I'm trying to overcome. Yeah. And again, I'm also conscious of the amount of plastic. Yeah. So one of the things that we have actually invested in is a water filter. Which is still in the box from Christmas. But
you need to get out of the box, right?
But we'll get it out of the box.
We've got world-class drinking water in the UK.
But I must say, though, exposure is everything. When you travel and see how, experience culture, experience how the things that other people put or value, naturally you'll always be conscious on the pound you spend, the way you use water, the way you use electricity. You always be conscious of all of those things, So for just looking at UK and Malawi, yes, I can say we can be a little bit overindulgent here in the UK, and Malawi water is definitely a luxury, and everyone cherishes water.
Oh, fantastic. God, I don't want to stop, actually. This is fascinating. And probably the most serious edition of Waterfall we've had, which isn't a bad thing, by the way, because very, very powerful stuff. But I think we should just change title slightly and just to finish.
Yeah.
Tell us what you love the most about Malawi, because we've talked about issues with water, and when I looked up Malawi, my first reaction was, what? I didn't have a clue this was such an amazing, diverse country. And second one was, when can I go?
Okay. So Malawi, by the way, it's called the warm heart of Africa. Yeah. And it's called the warm heart of Africa for a reason. Malawi weather is beautiful. Like I said, the landscape, I said this at the beginning, the landscape is amazing. And most importantly, the people are the friendliest you ever meet in your life. I have an interesting story. I had a client from London, some years back, and he came with me to Malawi for the first time, and he was blown away. He was like, "This is amazing." We went to the lake, freshwater lake, clear water. He went snorkeling. We went on boats. It was amazing. The food is amazing because it's organic. He had a great time. Of course, we were there for work. And then I remember we were sitting like outside of the hotel on a balcony, and he called his wife, you know, he said, I would love for you to come to Malawi, please. Like, we're here for another week. Just come. I think it was a Thursday. He was like, if you can leave tomorrow, I'll book you a flight, leave tomorrow, come to Malawi. Just come for a weekend or just a few days. She lived in Chelsea and she had never been anywhere near Africa. She's traveled the world, well traveled, in fact. And she absolutely refused. She says, I've got no interest. There's nothing for me to do. You're there for work. This is you dragging me along to another one of your work things, isn't it? He said, no, it's like, I've just had the most incredible experience and I want to share it with you. Anyway, he managed to convince her. She said, right, I'm going to come for 2 days. Yeah. She came. It's a 14-hour flight, by the way, with a connection in Ethiopia. She got to Malawi. She was in a bad mood because I picked her up from the airport, so I could just tell that she did not want to be there. And then to make it worse, we had to drive for 3 hours to the lake. She got there. I sort of like left my client with his wife. You know, they had a great
Once you'd put her in a bad mood.
Yeah. Because she thought, airport to the hotel would be like 20 minutes. I was like, no, it's a 3-hour drive. We've got to go near the lake, to the lake. She was coming for 3 days. She ended up staying in Malawi for 6 months.
Wow.
And started volunteering at a school.
An endorsement.
Yeah. She stayed in
You
Malawi.
kidnapped her.
No. We left. The day that we left, she says, no, I can't get on the plane. She says, I'm in love with this place. I cannot believe that I even refused or even had, you know, I almost didn't get on the plane. She was like, I'll be frank, I almost didn't get on the plane because I didn't care about coming here. She ended up staying there for 6 months, volunteered at a school. And I've got so many stories like this. You know, I've got so many stories. I met someone at the airport. We're sitting in the lounge and it was like, oh, where are you going? I was like, oh, Malawi. He goes, oh, interestingly enough, my wife and I, British couple, they say we went to Malawi 15 years ago and we go every year now since then. Our kids are now 13 and we're taking them to Malawi for the first time because we want them to experience what we've experienced. And I could tell you so many stories like this. So many stories where people go to Malawi and they just think, great, I'm staying here. Because it's so peaceful. It's not one of those places where you look over your shoulder or you're concerned about, and everyone is very friendly. Everyone is very, very friendly. Yeah, it's just.
I mean, when can I go?
Yeah. The climate is amazing. The food is amazing. And if you want to see a bit of wildlife, not even a little bit, you can see the whole spectrum of wildlife. It's incredible. The nature reserves there are fantastic. You know, the food is amazing. They have the world's best gin. I still stand by that. I still stand by that. Yeah, it's incredible. I think for everyone listening, if you can, or if you've never been to Malawi, I would strongly recommend it.
Arthur, it's been brilliant to speak to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me on.
You know, doing the research for us, I want to go even more now. But thank you for sharing with us. And, you know, it's been so insightful. And it'd be great to have you back on in the future.
I'll be, most definitely. I'd love to come and share what we're doing.
Hear about some of your projects once they're done.
Yeah.
Awesome. Nice one. Thank you.
CCW, passionate about championing the best interests of everyone who uses water, now and in the future.
So that was Arthur. Great to get a completely different perspective than just a purely UK perspective on all of this. Now, Karen, there is some irony in this episode because when we knew Arthur was coming on, we all did some prep in advance of the podcast, and let's just say, out of the two hosts, I think you possibly did a lot more revision than I did in brushing up, learning about Malawi. And then, ironically, you couldn't actually make it on the day, so that was all wasted. But what did you make of Arthur?
I thought it was brilliant, and the fact that he articulated just how precious water is, and I think sometimes we lose sight of that in our country.
Oh, absolutely.
And it was just a lovely reminder of how fundamental to our existence water is.
Yeah, no, that's spot on, and Arthur really clearly set that out, didn't he? So look, It was great to hear from Arthur. We're really short on time in this episode, so we've got to say goodbye now. This could have been double the length with all the stuff that we heard from Arthur. But don't forget, you can get in touch with the show. We have an email address.
We do, and that is podcast@ccwater.org.uk.
And don't forget, can get in touch. We do love hearing from you. So it's goodbye from me, Mike.
And it's goodbye from me, Karen.